thank you so much for being on the show. It's really awesome to have you on because I've been following your story and it's such an interesting one. And your motto is our only limit is our imagination, which is astounding. Now, where along your wonderful life journey did you have the inspiration to create Viome? Was that a sudden thing out of necessity, frustration? Where did that come from?
Like anything else in life, people somehow think there is this magical moment that happens where you suddenly become a different person. And I think what I find actually in reality, life is a continuum. It is constantly building on top of each thing. So one previous thing leads you to something else, and then you eventually build on it. And as the saying goes, the last straw that breaks the camel's back. It's not the last straw. It is the cumulative stuff that really has happened all the way in the past. So I really think that every interaction we have with someone, everything we see in life, every time we think about a problem, every time we think about the frustration, they all build on top of each other. And one day you wake up and say, enough is enough, and go do something about it, right? And I think, and then most of the time we go back and rewrite the corporate history to come back with a movement that actually changed all that. But it's rarely true. So if we go back and look at the thing, it's rarely true because the last of a lot of these legends are actually made after the success has happened, right?
Isn't it funny that most stories are kind of like, it boils down to one thing they want because that's what marketing wants. It makes it easier. But the story is usually a lifetime, if not numerous lifetimes of other people also, right? And it's that culmination that gets to there. But Viome really is a different company in many ways. Can you explain a little bit what made you get to that point where you said, all right, I really want to do this? I mean, microbiome has been something that's been growing in popularity, you could say, genetic testing, but the way you went about it was really unique.
So I think, Casper, so let me just take a framework here because I really think that's going to help the people who are listening to it. So, as you know, I was behind me, you can see all the stuff from the space here, all the astronauts, all the meteorites on the sites here. But, I was finishing up this project on living on the moon. And, it occurred to me that what should I do next that could fundamentally improve the lives of billions of people on the planet Earth? And, so I have this framework that I go through anytime I start a company or a project. So first thing you ask yourself is, why this, why now, and why me? And if you can go through that, it fundamentally change, you can apply that to almost anything. So why this? The number one thing you have to ask yourself is, God forbid, I am actually successful in doing what I'm about to be doing. Is it going to really help a billion people live a better life? The answer to that is no. Then you really have to ask yourself that if you're going to be dedicating 10 years of your life to something, and do you really want to dedicate your life to something that's not going to move the needle for many people, right? Because also in my opinion, it's easier to start an audacious company than to start something small. It's because best and the brightest in the world want to work for something that actually is meaningful. The best and the brightest want to work on the toughest problem. They want to work on something that will make them significant, that will make them, create some type of their own legacy. Right. So if you have people who are just absolutely in the top of their game, what do they want? They want to create a legacy. They want to work on something that fundamentally changes things, right? So give them that type of an audacious idea. They're willing to come and join you on your mission. So that's the why this part. Why now is really something we all have to think about. Despite every one of us thinking that it is really my brilliant vision and, my team and, my execution, all that thing. And by the way, don't get me wrong, all that matters. But the number one determination of success is timing. Right? Despite what anyone tells you, if your timing is wrong, it doesn't matter how smart you are, it doesn't matter how brilliant your idea is, the timing is really the most meaningful. So there have been a lot of studies done. The number one determinant of success is timing. Right? Facebook wasn't the first social network. We know there was MySpace before, there was Friendster. The timing was just happened to be right. And you can go through literally every one of the successful company. It is a timing. So now, what about that timing? And that's really, it's not by you get lucky in timing. And that's what I think I want people to know. People think timing is luck. No, timing is not luck. Timing is actually extremely determinable when it is the right time. So, so in our case, when I started to apply these things to Viome, so I say, God forbid, our mission was very simple. What if we could prevent and reverse chronic diseases? And the reason we picked on the chronic diseases is it is not something you're born with. Right. It is not something that is, you wake up in the morning and say, you know what, honey, I was out with the boys last night. I think I might have caught diabetes. Well, you don't catch diabetes. It's not like you say, honey, I think I caught obesity last night. No, honey, you have been a fat for a very long time, so don't you worry about it. My point is, you don't catch autoimmune diseases. You don't catch these diseases. Right. You develop these diseases over a long period of time. So in my opinion, this is a problem that is preventable and reversible. And I'm going to come back to it in a second here, why all that happens. So in our case, we say, what if we can solve this problem? And my first thing was, is it going to help 1 billion people live a better life? The answer was yes. So my first checkbox was done. Why this? Why now was very interesting. I said, to solve this problem, there are 3 things need to happen. You have to be able to digitize the analog body. So our body is all analog, and then you take these fluids from our analog body, call them saliva and blood and urine and stool. These are all analog. How do you convert them how can you digitize the human body? Because once you can digitize the human body, then you say, you know what, now I can do something else with it. So the first thing was, is the timing now the right timing? The cost of digitizing the human body, the cost of sequencing can't be $1,000. It can't even be $100. It really needs to come down to $10 for this to be really massively successful. And 4 years ago, when I started to see the trend, it was pretty obvious to me. It was on the exponential curve down. That means even though it was over $1,000, I knew by the time we launch a product, it's going to get down to $10. So that was number one thing. The second part was, once you digitize the human body, you're going to have this massive amount of data. To process this data, a decade ago, you would require probably one of the fastest supercomputer to do that. And you have to say, wait a sec, I'm not going to have access to this fastest supercomputer. Is there a processing power now that exists, that's available to everyone, that you can go out and process a massive amount of data, and cost of processing has to be close to zero? And guess what? AWS was starting to come along, and you started to see you can 5,000 cores at AWS for the cost of a couple of $100, and you can literally start to process massive amount of data. That was good. The third thing that needs to happen is, now that you have all this massive amount of data that you process, how do you decipher it? How do you make sense of all this data? That means the AI or the artificial intelligence had to be powerful enough to do that. So idea was, is the cost of digitization low enough? Is the cost of decoding low enough? And the cost of deciphering powerful enough for you to do that? And the answer to all 3 was, timing is now. And that's the reason 4 years ago we say, time is now for me to do something about it. The third part is really the most interesting part, which is why me? And now, as I think you pointed out, it's first thing I do before I start any company is, I am an information junkie. I know nothing about this problem. I am not a doctor. I'm not a physician. In fact, I don't even recall my high school biology classes anymore. But the point was, hey, what if I could, understand what is going on? Why do people have chronic diseases? And one of the things I learned is, you never, ever want to read one book on a subject, because if you read that book on a subject, the author's view becomes your view. What I do is, I read 12 books on that subject. And guess what happened? Now you have 12 different views of the problem. And guess what happened? You create the 13th view, which is your own, by connecting all the dots. And that is the most meaningful information.